Welcome back to the Death Knight Starter Zone. So, I looked around and I found a few more pieces up here that we can be able to look at. They're quite funny. Before we go talk to the Lich King and then make our way down to the other level to look at some others. But there's a sign here. Want to point this out. Attention, guys. I warned the lot of you that the next campaign, on which I spent more time cleaning my boots than kicking infants, heads would roll. Dung cleanup shifts are henceforth doubled in length and number for all Geis. Instructor Vesuvius. Now, you notice this guy right here? Corpulus. This is our chef, basically, because he sells food and drink. So he has some mess hall rules.
Corpulus, great cook of Acaris, who make good food for you. He proud to feed mighty scourge and makes stronger. No make Corpulus mad. He no feed you. Rules. Death Knight eat first. Ghoul wait turn. No eat ghoul next to you. Need clean plate first. Okay, add on maggots and lice to food. Corpulus not offended. Got vermin? Bring to Corpulus. Okay, eat human or elf. Elf, other white meat. Mess part of meal. Corpulus, see napkin. Corpulus, hang head in shame. Okay, bring back food not rotten enough. Corpulus got 3 free armpits. Okay, eat with hands or swords. No eat hands or swords. Zombie need try more food. Think outside the brains. No eat self.
And then I found 4 hidden ones back here. These are funny because they are on a few different things, especially on the instances such as Stratholme, Sholomance, Nox. Let's go from right to left. On Undeath. After repeated failures at serving within the Scourge, I found that I held myself to much higher standards than even those within the upper echelons of the organization. Given the inherent inflexibility of social power structures, it is difficult to balance attempts to affect change with extant social challenges. It is fortunate, then, that this organization offers low-skill employment opportunities for disaffected individuals, or those inconvenienced by some malady, such as, in my case, death. I have come to embrace one truth. The arrival of death is cold and unfulfilling, and gives no answers. I am freed of earthly obligation, but I feel no relief, for I feel no heart. I simply am. I may only hope to fall again before the blazing wrath of a noble and merciful heart in glorious battle. The necropolis has been called back to Icecrown. We have taken on supplies and personnel, and the city is alive once again. I am different. I feel whole. I feel alive. I feel his perfect will directing me. I know exactly where I will stand, and when the warriors come, I will test them. On Stratholme. Today I became a Kel'Thuzad necromancer, written within Stratholme. I rather wonder why no one puts out the fires, and I was mortified to learn of the nonsensical system of ziggurats linked to the slaughterhouse gates. If we need to keep people away from the slaughterhouse, why don't we just lock the gate? Forever. I'm beginning to learn why things are backwards around here. This arrogant sod on a rotten horse strolls by and proclaims himself Baron Rivendare of Stratholme. The man has clearly mistaken the Scourge for a petting zoo, as he spends half of every afternoon moving the disciples, minions, and constructs into small groups and stationing them around the city. Again, if you've done the Stratholme dungeon, especially back in the day, this is really funny. After the completion of the Baron's tea time parade tonight, a party of oh, let's call them well-wishers, stomped through the city, knocking down the pins that he'd set up. "Lock the gates," I urged him. "The minions in control of my ziggurats will protect the slaughterhouse, boy," he assured me. I'm packing my crap and booking it out of the back gate. It looks like I made a clean break. Judging by the smoke coming from the city, my flight was timely. A gainless venture working in Stratholme, except that I stole the bastard's signet ring. A modest forgery bearing the Baron's seal should see me comfortably inside the walls of Naxxramas. On Sholomance. I have earned the chapter's favor at last, and been granted entry to the Sholomance. Today, my final ascent into glorious undeath begins. Things within the Sholomance are far more rustic than I'd expected. Research materials are strewn in awkward piles, some sealed together with wax dripped from the odd unrended candle. Constructs, spirits, and demons roam the halls untended. I must say that I expected more from such practiced necromancers as these. Today a troop of brigands broke into the school and began slashing their way through to the crypts. As they cut down a sturdy group in the foyer, and the nearby students continued their practices, oblivious. The forces within that hall would overwhelm a small army, yet they yielded piecemeal. Fools! As I read with Dark Master Gandling today, invaders broke through the viewing room doors and reached the crypts. The crazy sod hid behind a bookcase, giggling as he watched them slay each of the school's administrators within the crypts. Then he burst forth, shouting, "School is in session!" Is he off his rocker? I'm recommending myself for transfer to Stratholme. And now, Naxxramas. I went to work within a war factory of the mighty Scourge today. Naxxramas bristles with activity. I was saddened to learn that they were using more foolish puzzle mechanisms to power mission critical teleport devices. But otherwise it seemed to be a tight ship. My thoughts turned toward gainful research, until I ran astray of the perverse Nerubian. The Nerubian's overtures are without number, always calling to me in that creepy droning voice of its. Invitations to study in his parlor. I've taken to sequestering myself in the broken pipe beneath Gluth's chambers, as it's the only place that he won't follow me. My mind is wearing thin. How does this lackadaisical cadre of misfits and rotting corpses intend to conquer all of Azeroth? Their self-defeating disingenuity falls short of any reasonable appearance of effort at self-preservation. I can make no effort to effect change with the detestable Nerubian hounding my footsteps and blackening my dreams. Though this may seem a trend in my recent ventures with employment and the Scourge, adventurers have broken into the necropolis and are killing my colleagues. Alas, even the hot redhead in Fairlena's cult, slain before the creepy spider would not let me talk with her. I hate this place. As soon as I turn undead, I am so out of here. It's time to fight. Hope you enjoyed those. By the way, I should point this out. We have a buff going on called Undying Resolve, watched over and protected by the Lich King. Can occur only once every 10 minutes. So we'll head down to the lower level and check out the other stuff that's down there. But before we do that... Ooh. Actually, I already sold this stuff. So, unfortunately, you'll notice I put a lot of my heirloom stuff on. Unfortunately, I could do... Nope. Yeah, see, you have to have at least 1 gold when you make a new character to transmog anything. So even though I would love to be able to like transmog myself right away, I have no money. This is a new character, and he has no money. The only way I could get this guy money to use transmogs this early on, to go over any heirloom stuff I put on, is if I get on another character and mail myself some gold, which I could do, but we'll hold off on that.
All life must end.
So, by the way, I don't know if you caught it when he was doing his opening speech, but when he said gaze upon that area. That's the Scarlet Crusade. Puh. An organization that I, amongst others, consider worse than the Scourge. No, seriously.
The time to spill the blood of our enemies approaches. You must first learn what it is that you seek to destroy before rushing headlong into battle. It is what separates a Death Knight from a mindless ghoul. I will grant you sight beyond sight, my champion. Behold the Eye of Thundera.
Oh, sorry.
I will use the Eye of Acaris to steal our enemy's secrets.
This is a fun little quest. I remember the first time trying this, I could not figure out what I was doing.
Towering above this platform is the Eye of Acaris. From it, you will call forth a probe that you will then use to analyze Scarlet Crusade fortifications at New Avalon. The Eye has a host of powers that should make the acquisition of this data simple. Use the Eye Siphon to analyze the Forge, Town Hall, Hold, and Chapel. The Eye's control mechanisms are located on either side of this platform. Waste no more time, Papaneeks. The Scourge will have this place. The Lich King commands it.
Conquer in my name.
Of course. Why does this have to be like an invisible wall? I just want to show off the Lich King. Is that too much to ask? So yeah, I remember the very first time that I tried to do this, I was just kind of like, huh? Duh. Whoa! I pressed the escape button by mistake. My bad. I didn't know it was going to cancel this little sequence here. So I have to hold on. I can't move it just yet. But yeah, it's funny. For the majority of this starter zone, we are mainly fighting the Scarlet Crusade, which, of course, many of us are not at all opposed to slaughtering. Like, seriously. Screw the Scarlet Crusade. Alright, so we're controlling this thing. You gotta be careful. You can't get too close, otherwise they'll shoot this thing down. But we have Siphon, which targets a structure and gathers tactical information associated with the building. We also have Summon Ghouls, which can call ghouls and have them attack the aggressor in case they're giving us trouble, or we can shroud it from sight. Combat and actions will break the shroud. So let's go ahead and Siphon, because we are close to that building right there. Alright, so now we have info on the Avalon Forge. Let's shroud ourselves. Alright, so we are at the Scarlet Hold. Siphon. Whole bunch of people down there. Yeah, there's Scarlet Crusaders, and then there's a bunch of citizens. I probably should point something out that I forgot to mention in the previous part. I mentioned how our character that we make here as a Death Knight, we were a adventurer in vanilla, and then we died. And that's how the Lich King brought us back. Though how that... The way that applies to Blood Elves and Draenei... well, more so Draenei. Blood Elves makes perfect sense, because after all, remember what happened in Warcraft 3. But Draenei, it's still a tad bit confusing for me. But the idea is that we were brought back. And then, of course, another important thing to know about when you're first brought back as a Death Knight is important if you know about the different forms of undead in this setting. When we are brought back as a Death Knight, we are a form of undead where the soul is removed from the body. So right now we are currently a Death Knight whose soul has been detached. So we are not ourselves at the moment. We will be by the end of the starter zone. But for now, we are still a mindless scourge who serves the will of the Lich King, basically. Because we're going to be doing things while we're here that are not so great. But we don't really have a choice because we don't have our soul and our free will. We are basically completely at the mercy to do the bidding of the Lich King. So that's kind of important to note in regards to the noting how many citizens, just regular common citizens, are here. Remember that for later. I'm just saying. Gosh, I want to impersonate the Lich King, but man, that really. My throat is already starting to feel a little worn from doing that impression. You know what it is? It's not. It's I don't have the people at Blizzard that do the sound modifications that that Michael McConaughey has. That's the problem. If only I had those incredible people that do the sound modifying and sound design. Okay, so. Cancel.
Bow to your master.
They prepare for battle, as expected. But there is something else. I sense an old enemy. An enemy that I destroyed long ago. It matters not. We will send the full might of the Scourge against them before they have a chance to evacuate their homes and put in place their defenses. Listen well, Death Knight, for I give to you the words that will start a war. My final judgment has been passed. Death to all. None shall stand so boldly against the might of the Scourge without reprisal. As you have served me well in your first task, so too shall you serve me in your next task. Take my judgment to High Lord Mograine at the command post of Acris, found on the first floor. Tell him to begin the assault, and when the crusade has been dealt with, we will finish off the Argent Dawn.
Okay. This is a really nice buff we'll get. Okay.
Slay all who oppose us.
Yes, my king. I'm gonna stop on trying to impersonate the Lich King because my throat is right now just kind of starting to really feel sore. In fact, give me just a second. Take a drink of water. Oh boy. Then I'm gonna pop in a cough drop. Just to be safe. Alright, so welcome to the command floor of Acris. That's Squire Edwards. Note the beard. So apparently she's a banshee. I don't know, maybe... I guess not all banshees have that regular banshee form. I no longer train Death Knights, having grown weary of cretinous initiates and their constant questions. Now be gone.
Ashes to ashes.
Oh, what's this? Some guys named Thasarian, Kultir Deathweaver, and Orbaz Bloodbane. I wonder who those guys are. Nah, I'm sure they won't be important, relevant characters at all. Baron Rivendare and Darian Mograine. Let's go ahead and take a look around real quick. Just kind of walk around. There's a Kel'Thuzad. We'll see him again in Legion. Cold Wraith. So this is something I like about this area of Acheris. I've always liked how it really tries to, and this they also do this in, of course, Icecrown Citadel when you get to the Upper Spire, is the emphasis on the three specs. The three specs that really help kind of exemplify the powers of the Death Knight and the Scourge. Frost, Unholy, and Blood. There's a section dedicated to each spec. So great. Yeah, these Disciples of Frost where Kel'Thuzad is teaching them.
Death greets you, young one.
I like Kel'Thuzad because, of course, he is voiced by someone who, of course, you guys remember The Walking Dead? No, not the show. I mean Season 1 of the Telltale's Walking Dead.
There's no tape inside. There are no batteries in here.
That is Lee from The Walking Dead. Yes, that's the same voice actor.
We are what the cold wind carries, the icy chill of despair, the cold embrace of death.
We do what the living cannot.
Hold on, were there any little texts or whatever in this area? Any books? Any books at all? There is a book by Kel'Thuzad in this level. I just have to remember where exactly it is. I know like a number of the books are over there, but I'm just curious if there are any kind of like just on the outside here. And then here's the section on Blood, the tank spec. I will say, I've gotten to really enjoy playing as a Blood Death Knight, like in raids and dungeons and such. Once I learned how to play it, it was like, oh, okay. So these are the Disciples of Blood. And yes, it sounds as gruesome as it is. Just look at those tables.
I will listen, for now.
The blood is life. And as easily as the ebb and flow of blood is controlled, so too is the life of our enemies.
Tomorrow is another day.
So he has some memoirs. It has reached my attention that some new Death Knights may be troubled by memories of their former lives. I entreat these restless minds to brood no longer, as no one can be filled with more loathing of his previous errors than I. Yet in the Scourge, I have found absolution. In my ignorance, I was once a paladin, pledged to the hateful light, blinded with lies about hope. I left my wife and 2 young daughters at home while I scouted for Scourge presence in our area. Our petty band searched the woods for weeks, but every trail went cold. Winter set in, and still we had learned nothing about the enemy. Frustrated, we turned homeward. Ascending the final hill revealed a terrifying vista. The village lay burnt and deformed. I ran to our house. A makeshift bolt has been nailed across the outside of the door. Too distressed to wonder at this, I burst in to find the remains of my family prostrate at my feet, charred beyond recognition. I turned away in anguish and beheld the gashes in the door where they had clawed in panic. The smallest scratches had belonged to the youngest. I later learned that in our absence, rumors had flown that a plague bringer was hiding around the village. The Scarlet Crusade had seen to it that every last inhabitant was rounded up and burnt alive. Unthinkable though their cruelty was, I found that the same feeling now stirred inside my breast. I yearned to hunt down the Crusaders, to make them suffer the rage of my blade. Eventually, I was made to reassemble with the rest of my party. I sensed my own despondence and fury in some of the others, but the leaders ordered us to continue to the nearest remaining waypoint. Not long after nightfall, we heard the ominous cackling of the undead echoing from the trees, and a wave of scourge overtook us. Mechanically, I slew them, but for each of the fallen, 2 more crawled forth from the hills. We were caught in the same tide of scourge we had been hunting, only now we were broken and unprepared. My allies were succumbing to wounds and exhaustion. There were too many scourge to resist now. As the blows came, I remembered playing in these woods with my daughters. It filled me with hatred. Why must such memories exist? They were an illusion, serving only to distract me from the reality of pain and disillusion. My daughters were dead, and the field overrun with scourge. Death is the only real end to any mortal tale. Wielding power to protect leads inalterably to failure. Success meets only those who use it for a different end. Then and there, I swore allegiance to the Lich King, the herald of victory in our age. He purged me of the hateful human sensations that had tormented me. I was reborn as a Death Knight. There is no force to which my brethren and I will fail. There are no defeats bitter enough to test my icy resolve. Cleansed by the scourge, I stand ready to satiate my lust for death throughout the length and breadth of Azeroth. So yeah, screw the Scarlet Crusade. Seriously, they can all go to hell. I'm telling you, the Scarlet Crusade is worse than the Scourge. They are just evil. They heard rumors that there was someone or somewhere around the village, not in the village, just kind of near the village, so they decided to just go ahead and burn everyone alive. Alright, and this is the wing for Unholy, where, of course, Lady Alystra is here to teach the ways of disease and plague.
We press on.
It is through the power of the Unholy that we command death itself. Now, this is a cool little feature. Through this one of these trainers, you can actually change your Summon Gargoyle spell into a Summon a Valkyr spell. It's pretty cool. I like using it.
We are
Dearest Shadow Realm, grace us with the presence of one of your many denizens. Me back, Master. Ghouls? We have quite enough of those already. I often find the trouble with ghouls is that they outlive their usefulness too quickly. Let us let death and decay reclaim these. It hurts. At times, their corpses can prove more useful than the ghouls themselves. I'm pretty sure she just casted Corpse Explosion. Unfortunate. Yeah, she just killed all those initiates there.
speak your piece. Another time.
Yeah, I prefer the look of the Summon Valkyr instead of the Summon Gargoyle. Just checking if any of these books are readable. There's one just sitting here, but you can't read it. Alright. So we've had a look at all three of the wings. Now let's head to the center area, where I'm going to show you a couple individuals and something very special. So, say hello to Darian Mograine with the Crimson Death Charger, which I still don't have, but that's because I haven't finished the whole quest line involving getting Shadowmourne. I'm working on it. I just need to do the blood infusion stuff and then continue from there with my Paladin. And of course, Baron Rivendare. I have that sword that he's wielding, but I still don't have this mount, the Death Charger's Reigns mount. It's one of those rare mounts. It has like a less than 1% chance of dropping in the Stratholme dungeon. I would love to have this mount, but I don't know. I don't know how long it's gonna take me for me to actually get it. And then Mograine has something. I don't know if you can actually hear. I hope you guys could hear that. But this is the corrupted Ashbringer. At least the corrupted Ashbringer from back in the days of vanilla. Nowadays, the Legion version of corrupted Ashbringer does look a little different. But that's how it used to look back in the day. And yeah, he currently has that because his father used to be one of the Four Horsemen back in vanilla. Nox Ramus. And now Darian has it and has been using it as a Death Knight in service to the Lich King. Just kind of want to really emphasize this. But, you could hear some of the whispers from it. Alright, so now there are some books around here to read. Just want to see if I can. Pretty sure I already read this one. Yeah. Yeah, it's the same one from before. Ooh, what's this? The Raising of a Frostworm. The hulking bones were nearly swallowed by the snow, but there was no mistaking the grim claw that jutted upward, twisted in solemn agony. The necromancers assembled without a word, forming a ring around the dragon's corpse. They stood still for a moment as the wind encircled them with gusts of snow. Then the ritual began. Spokes of unholy light emanated from the center of the frozen bones, cracking through the snow and ice until at last the immense remains were fully exposed. With a gesture from Grand Necrolord Antioch, the bones shuddered and lurched above the ground, rotating slowly into place. The necromancer's incantations swelled as they began forcing sentience into the creature's remains. Violent contortions racked the body as the worm's conscience fought against its corrupt reanimation. A thin shriek pierced the air, and the beast was subdued. An icy glow ignited within its gaping ribs, spreading along its limbs and lending an eerie cogniscience to the sockets of its eyes. The Grand Necrolord came forward and spoke. "The Lich King has seen fit to raise you to serve the Scourge. You will be our loftiest instrument of death, raining torment upon the villages of our enemies, feasting upon the living, and bearing our finest Death Knights." The Frostworm regarded them and dipped its head slightly in accord. The conversion was complete. Rearing back, it flared its wings like a fan of knives across the sky. Note that it took an entire ring of necromancers to try and revive that Frostworm, because it's really, really hard to do that. It takes a lot of power to raise a Frostworm from the dead. I say that because remember, in the Wrath of the Lich King cinematic, the Lich King does it with very little effort, with ease. He holds out his sword, he slams it into the ground, and Sindragosa is risen. I point that out to try and make a point of how powerful the Lich King is when it comes to just simply raising something like a dragon back from the dead. That's the Undercity one I'm pretty sure I already read. Ooh, Dragonblight. Ghoul out of the way. Prince Valinor is looking for an exceptional Death Knight to travel into Dragonblight, Northrend's frozen central plain, and lead an elite cadre of soldiers on a strike against the Red Dragonflight. Your training is nearly complete, he said in a recent public address. The time has come to strike against those who would protect the living. We shall show them the true meaning of Dragonblight. Alexstrasza, Red Dragon Queen and arguably the Scourge's most powerful enemy in Northrend, has been seen building up her own army as of late, though it's assumed that her efforts are aimed at the rogue Blue Dragonflight. Because of course of what was going on with Malagos. Lots of books in this area. Not all of them are readable though, which is kind of sad. This is Prince Kel'Thuzad. Report from the front lines, Western Northrend. Reports from the aerial surveillance squadron in Icecrown Glacier show that communication with the Lich Lord Chillwinter has been sharply cut off. Chillwinter was last seen piloting the necropolis Talramus over Borean tundra on a confidential mission, reports Scourge engineer Koromon, the squadron's chief information officer. Our diagnostics show that his communication crystals are fully operational. It's just dead silent. Eastern Kingdoms. I just read that one. There's a few good ones here. The Compendium of Fallen Heroes. Tartek, the Enraged, one of the most powerful abominations the Scourge has ever created, assembled by Lich Amnenar, the Coldbringer, to assist in setting up a base at Razorfen Downs. Tartek single-handedly felled more than 1,200 Quilboar before finally being overcome. His sacrifice provided the corpses for Amnenar to quickly raise an undead Quilboar army of his own, ultimately assembling the first major Scourge outpost on Kalimdor. Some of Tartek's remains were reanimated and used to create Glutton, Amnenar's current lieutenant. Obrahilm, the Traveler. Brilliant architect, pivotal in the conception of Naxxramas, and the mastermind behind the creation of Acheris, quickly rose up the ranks from lowly skeletal peon to one of Kel'Thuzad's most trusted advisors. Always the scholar, Obrahilm traveled the world in search of knowledge, notably taking most of his early inspiration from the architecture of the Nerubians and the magic of the Orc warlocks. He was last seen several years ago, headed west to study the ruins of Zin Azari in Kalimdor. Diodor, the Damned, human necromancer, one of the first members of the Cult of the Damned, and decorated hero of the First War, successfully led a contingent of Scourge to victory during the First and Second Summertide. Assaults upon Scarlet Monastery killed in action during the third and final Summertide assault, which was successfully repelled by Scarlet Crusade operatives that had finally figured out his modus operandi. Kirkazin, the Zealous, powerful lich who reported directly to the Lich King himself. A decorated veteran of countless battles, Kirkazin designed and led the siege of the Sanguine, one of the largest organized assaults on Light's Hope Chapel. Despite overwhelming odds, his attack was quickly countered, and his forces suffered enormous damages. Kirkazin himself received a critical blow from Lord Maxwell Tyrosus, and is no longer able to assume a corporeal form. So, I believe there's just 2 more left. One Truth and Undeath, and the Decree of the Scourge. Behold the finest of ironies. The living ascribe unto undeath. I'm trying to read this as Kel'Thuzad because I would imagine and can picture him having written both of these texts we're about to read. All the most sickly attributes of their own lives, hopeless servitude, savagery, stillness of the spirit, we serve. The living serve, too, though they serve kings. Well, actually, I read this one already. My bad. I already read that one. Alright, so I believe that just leaves this one left, which I'm pretty sure, like 99% sure. Yeah, right here. The Decree of the Scourge, Chapter 1, by Kel'Thuzad. The roots of the scourge are sown in the folly of all races. Our rise to power is the product of the sins of those who mean our end. The so-called heroes of the land fall before us by resorting to a measure of our ideals to bring forth their envisioned victory. Their victory is a vehicle to the realization that without resorting to what they define as deplorability to achieve it, we would have overcome them instead. In both outcomes, win or lose, the scourge invariably wins. When this is recognized, submission to our will is inevitable. The Master, our Lich King, was born under this very same doctrine. To conquer is to corrupt. To corrupt is to take what is to be righteous and hopeful to be living and invert it through by any means in your arsenal. The attributes of the living all have synonyms with fatal flaws that are their undoing. Hope is dogma, righteousness is zealotry, living is empathy. Recognize what makes that which lives desire to live, and turn it upon its. Let me say that. Let me try to say that again. I said that wrong. Recognize what makes that which lives desire to live, and turn it upon itself. Knowing the most direct path of corruption is the pinnacle of wisdom. A simple weakening of the heart, dismemberment of vital organs, or direct disease will work for most. However, the conqueror of most is not the decree of the Master, but the conqueror of all. It is foolish to spend excessive resources in warping the mind of a simple peasant where common plague will suffice. But it is equally unwise to try the same common plague against the seasoned and hardy. Regimented study of any formidability will reveal usable weaknesses. Chapter 2. The largest misconception that the living have of the scourge is our penchant for what is considered evil. For the sake of demoralization, we allow this error to perpetuate, and indeed spread it on our own. The true nature of the scourge is our transcendence of the shackles that keep any of the living races from becoming as prosperous as we. For example, what benefits do emotion and honor really hold? They serve to validate the living, to make them feel good. Now, what flaws do they hold? Emotion is directly correlated to the ignorance of logic and reason. Honor is, at most times, the sole perpetuator of able resources fighting a losing battle. It is baffling, even to me, that the living can be so unaware of how eager we are to play the part of their villain, to nurture their greatest flaws by becoming the embodiment of all that incites irrational behavior. Moral ambiguity cannot be cleansed. Antipathy cannot be healed or assuaged. Kel'Thuzad has a tendency to use words that sometimes I'm like, huh? Greed cannot be dispelled, and wrath cannot be cured. We choose to be the embodiment of all these things, and yet there are some still foolish enough to believe that the scourge can be defeated and removed completely. So long as the most attractive sins of the living remain our banner flag, there will always be those eager to flock to our will. I myself was born under this doctrine. Chapter 3. The scourge is infinite in potential. We are not, however, infallible by any means. Always be well aware of your limits and the resources at your disposal. Always have an exit strategy. Sacrifice of eager minions to your ends is a cornerstone of scourge philosophy. All manner of bravery, martyrdom, or compatriotism for anyone. But the master is imprudent and severely punishable. Another fallacy outsiders hold of the scourge is that our power resides in the residual will of the living, that we are not an advanced form of parasite, and without a host of regenerating life would simply wither away. Again, we do not deny such ignorant thoughts for our benefit, but this could not be further from the truth. We are nothing but an ever-improving form of adaptation to a land once riddled with endless struggle. We are immune to the tribulations of dissension, overpopulation, individuality, selfish opinion, short-sightedness, and even morality. We hear the will of the Master, and the Master brings us all that we will ever desire. Just makes you want to willingly join the scourge, doesn't it? It just sounds so appealing and so wonderful, doesn't it? It is true that we take architecture, technology, and physical prowess from assimilated cultures. This, like the so many evil acts of the scourge, is done entirely out of pragmatism. The scourge has neither the time nor the desire to generate a culture of its own. A member of the scourge that creates without influence will hold an inherent attachment to it, a right to see it viewed and used. This leads to individuality, which leads to dissension. Creativity is a flaw of culture, but a minor obligation when dealing with simple needs like buildings and equipment. It is not your duty to question or care of the origins of your resources, only in how usable they are. The scourge is the will of the land. All manner of life kneel to our will with an ease that yields a single conclusion, that they need us. They yearn for our salvation. There is no resilience to our practices, no immunity to our commandments. We are every bit the inevitability that a natural life holds. Death. Death comes with every life, and the undeath comes with every death. The sooner the living recognizes this immutable fact, the easier their transition will be. By Kel'Thuzad. Well, that convinced me. We're joining the scourge, everybody. What? 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 I thought that was a very convincing, compelling argument. Leave it to Kel'Thuzad to just write up a decree that you could hear, like, him giving as a speech, like at a podium, like at a seminar or something, trying to actually make a very compelling argument, like very pragmatic, very matter-of-fact, very It's like, it's actually very simple. It's like him just kind of breaking it down. You can absolutely picture and hear him doing that. I love that. I mean, I always fall back to one of my absolute favorite quotes from Warcraft 3, where he tells Arthas and Jaina, this plague is meant to help purge this land. And Arthas goes, and purge it of what exactly? And then one of my favorite lines he's ever said is, why, the living, of course. Again, Michael McConaughey, just amazing. Not just as the Lich King, but also as Kel'Thuzad and Uther. And I may never forgive Blizzard for switching the voice actor for Kel'Thuzad and Noxramas. I still hate that to this day. So we've been doing a ton of reading, basically, throughout these first couple parts. I'm pretty sure that is it for the reading here. So we will actually talk to Darian Mograine and kind of get underway with the rest of this starter zone. So stay tuned.